In this lesson, we will solve applied problems that require the zero factor property. In this equation, we're going to find the dimensions of a rectangle whose length is 6 more than its width and whose area is 91 square inches. Now, it's always a good idea when you have word problems so that you can better understand it. If you can draw a sketch of what it is that you're working with, sometimes that may help. So here we're talking about a rectangle, and we're also talking about finding the dimensions of that rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a sketch of the rectangle. And by the way, you should know that the area of a rectangle is the length times the width. So when we talk about length, length is referred to as the long side of a rectangle, and then the shorter side is its width. So in the word problem, we were told that the length, the long side, was 6 more than the width. Now, since they did not give us the width, we're going to just use the variable w. So the long side was 6 more. 6 more means plus. So it was 6 more than whatever the width is. We don't know what the width is, so let's just use a w for that. We do know that we were told that the area was 91. So we can plug everything in and set our equation up. And so what we have here is the length times the width, which equals the area, and the area was 91. So the first thing I need to do is to use the distributive property and distribute the w. So w times w is w squared. W times 6w w times 6 equals 6w. So there you have it, w squared plus 6w equals 91. Now we want to solve this using the zero factor property, but the problem here is that our equation is not in standard form. We need to get all our numbers to the left and 0 to the right. So to do that, I would need to subtract 91 from each side. Next, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with factoring it. And yes, I know that the back end number is a large number of 91. The best way to find it probably is just to use your calculator and try a few higher numbers in the teens or higher until you find a number that is divisible by the 91. So I'm going to go ahead and factor it for you. And that factors into w minus 7 times w plus 13. Last step to solving this is to solve for w. And our two solutions would be w equals 7 and w equals 13. Now, in terms of measurements, we can't get a negative output here. When we speak of measurements, for example, the measurement of a table, we're not going to say that that table is negative 12 inches by negative 6. So you just cannot use measurements in terms of negatives. Measurements are always thought of as positives. So therefore, we're going to throw out the negative, and that will leave us with just the width of being 7. Now, to find the length, if we look up on the visual that we drew of the rectangle, the length, the long side, is w plus 6. We just found out that w was 7. So if you do 7 plus 6, you will have the length, and the length is 13. Now, yes, of course, it gave you the same answer as you originally had. It just gave you the positive of it. So keep that in mind. Yes, you'll throw out the negative, but once you plug it in, yes, it will give you the positive of that number. The bottom line is the dimensions are 13 by 7 square inches. In this next example, an object is thrown upward from the top of an 80-foot building with an initial velocity of 64 feet per second. Neglecting air resistance, the height of the object after t seconds is given by the equation negative 16t squared plus 96t plus 12. How many seconds after the rock is dropped will it hit the ground? So we actually did one of these problems in class, but we only went as far as just to factor it. So here's where you're going to go further than just factoring it. You must also be able to solve for that variable. So first, all we need to do in this whole word problem, it's already the equation is already set up for us. Here's our equation, negative 16t squared plus 96t plus 112. And what we want to do is take the GCF out of that equation. And once we do that, we're left with a trinomial that needs to be factored further. So when we factor that trinomial, it's going to factor into t minus 7 times t plus 1 with our GCF on the outside. Last step for the zero factor property is to take each parentheses and solve for t. So that would mean t would equal 7 and t equals negative 1. So in terms of time, we want to know how many seconds it is before this rock hits the ground. We're talking about time. Same thing as with measurement. Measurements is never measured in negative, and neither is time. We don't say it's negative 1 o'clock or negative 2:30. So we throw out the negative, and what we're left here with is just our time here of 7 seconds. So we say that the object will hit the ground after 7 seconds. And there you have it, solving a problem, word problem, using the zero factor property. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching MVP Tutorials by your instructor, Dr. Speights. I hope you'll join me in the next lesson. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye for now.